Hello, everybody! If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my co-host Tom. What's up, buddy?
Hello, friends.
Also joining us this week, first time on the show, and that is completely my fault. Should have been on here a long time ago. Co-host of Cubic Shennanigans, and one of my favorite people to play this game against. It's Brendan. What's up, what's going on, brother?
Hey Vince, that would put you in a very small category of people. I have been told I'm not a lot of fun to play against.
Those people are wrong.
Hey, I enjoyed our game.
I did too, Tom. Like we're the perfect kind of people to be playing each other. Like,
Yeah.
These are my rules and this is what it does. Like, thank you. These are my rules and these are what they do. And we roll our dice and that's the game. And it was great.
It was.
See,
We smash each other and roll some charges, and we're like, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
See, here's how I would put it. Brendan is like Tom, but actually fun to play against. That's the difference that I would make right there.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Oh, the slander.
I think the first game I ever played you in, Brendan, was just, this is nothing to do with nothing, but was when I had Iron Jaws pre any kind of actual real rules. This is at NashCon like 3 years ago or something like that. Like pre any real rules for them. And you had, when like right after Legions had come out, Nagash, right?
Yep.
And,
That's correct.
And like I was like, all right, let's do this, all in. And I got like two of your units. I got one of your units of skeletons exploded. One of them down to like 3 guys left, and you were like, nope, not good enough. And then just they just all came back, because that was when you could still daisy chain out. You had like one guy on a gravesite over here and one guy on a gravesite 50 feet away in the same unit. That was a great game.
I have insanely fond memories of that specific moment in time when I had just a couple of months of just nonsense.
Yeah.
Like, this 40 man is in 7 places on the board, and you have to kill every single one of them. So
Yes.
good luck.
That's exactly what it was. And we were playing on a really hard, we were playing on like Better Part of Valor, I think, was the scenario. I don't know. Like,
No, Better Part of Valor. It was Scorched Earth.
You're
is what
right.
it was. Because I remember daisy chaining just slowly over the course of the game to your objectives, not moving any unit, just summoning models down. You're like, and now I control this objective, and then we're going to burn it.
Yeah, that was such a good game. It was a lot of fun. I was like, well, let's see if the Iron Jaws can kill an entire undead army. And it turned out the answer at that time was
no.
no. But it might be a slightly different answer now. The Mega Boss does like literally twice as much, or 2.5 times the damage he did at that point in time. But that's all right. It was a super fun game. So, but that's not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to talk about instead is OBR. We're new skeletons, new and improved skeletons. That's going to be our main topic tonight. That's right. The Bone Reapers, the Reapers of those bones, Bone Boys.
Them bones.
The Bone Daddies. I think we feel like we've gotten away from that, but we haven't. They're still Bone Daddies. They were Bone Daddies. They'll always be Bone Daddies. But first, of course, we've got some news. Tom.
I mean, I probably should do the rumor engine, but I'm not.
Nope. It's up on the. It's still in our news list, and I cut it.
I know.
I cut it. Because instead of the rumor engine, we're going to talk about this other thing that got revealed today, which is amazing and proof of everything we've been talking about.
I've said vampirates.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe they
Looks
don't
like it
pirates.
might be. Yeah,
See,
they're not pirates, but vampires might be here.
Uh-huh.
See, this is where I disagree. Where this is so clearly just a diversion tactic to make you think that you're getting exactly what you want, where in reality, this is something totally different.
I mean, you're probably not wrong. So here's a fun thing. Because we know that the gridiron, here, I'm going to jump to the next news item.
Yeah.
Because we know that the gridiron, blood and whatever is coming. We're having it in another announcement show, right?
Yeah, there's a preview show this Saturday. Yes, correct.
And normally they're not exclusive to a single game system.
Nope, they've said specifically this one will focus on boxed games and stuff like that. Yes.
Right. With that in mind, the reality is that what we're probably looking at here is an Underworld's warband.
You think we're gonna get a vampire Underworld's warband, or a vampire Warcry warband, or a vampire Blood Bowl team, or whatever?
Yes. Yes, like it'll have to be something related to the AOS universe because it was in the Hammerhall Herald.
Sure.
But I think that it'll be either Underworld or it'll be Shades or Underworld or Warcry. Like I think that's what we're probably seeing. And that I don't think that it's actually that army. Because normally these type of teases only happen the week or two before something drops, like something gets announced officially.
Sure.
And I don't really see this happening unless they do like a surprise army for Halloween, which I don't think like none of the tea leaves are suggesting that that's the case. And so I think that we will get this from Dusk Till Dawn warband. Probably for one of those auxiliary games.
Here's my suspicion. It's a vampire army and we're getting a vampire army. That's what I'm saying. I'm putting all my money on it. I'm hoping for it. By all my money, I mean $0. But I'm hoping for it.
Because like this could be like the January release and you have that 3-month cycle until you get it. And Games Workshop is just like, we're sick of it. Stop guessing vampirates. Please.
Every week on every show. Why won't it stop? We've been getting letters upon letters. Yes. I mean, it's a good point.
Maybe.
Sure. Right now, there's no other armies we know. Right? Nothing, like, we don't know of any releases other than the big box. Right? The
we only know of the narrative campaign coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. And and it feels to me like my particular guess is you're going to get Immortal Slaanesh on the heels of that box set at some point. Now, I don't know. Those could be quite a distance apart, by the by. If you remember, Slaanesh got the Realm of Chaos book or box or whatever. Remember the Khorne versus Slaanesh box set? And then it was 7 months or something. And Wrath and Rapture until the actual army came out. Yep. So I'm not saying that it's necessarily going to be the next week after the Slaanesh versus Doc set that we get the Mortal Slaanesh, but it's around, right? And to me, this is just them starting the hype machine up for like, hey, we know you all want vampires. We know you want them. Well, guess what? They're coming. And that's just what I think is going on here. There you go.
I mean, maybe. Like, I'll say this: if we don't see them in the preview show this weekend, then I think then I'm 100% on board for that.
Okay, got it.
I'm trying to temper my expectations by saying that most likely what this is just pointing towards this preview weekend. Now, if nothing materializes out of the preview weekend, it's definitely an army.
Okay, I like that. I like that.
That's what I'm going to say.
Okay. Dig it. And no, we don't have any news on the battle boxes for Christmas yet.
Just nothing.
Yeah, just nothing.
Normally,
they might talk about that this week.
Normally, we see that mid-October to beginning of November.
Sure. I mean, if this is a box game thing, so they could talk about big boxed releases during that.
It's true.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, there you go.
I thought you were talking about the Christmas Battle Force boxes.
Yeah, I am.
Those are normally okay.
I am. I'm saying they could just, hey, those are big boxes of stuff. They could just shove that into the preview show this weekend, right? As one of the items.
Yeah.
Because they tend to do like 6 items during these preview shows. It could easily be one of them.
Yeah.
So, just a thought. All right. What else we got?
I have to click on a link. We have the preview weekend. We've talked about that. Yes. Warhammer Day, October 31st.
Completely underwhelming, but I had to mention it. It's a thing. If you want a little special 40K guy, you can get him in the store. Okay.
Every day is Warhammer Day in this house.
That's right. Those cases right behind you confirm that. There you go. That's right. Tom, where's your cases?
That's just the painted stuff.
There you go. Where's your cases, Tom?
Over there.
Oh, okay.
And right there.
Oh, that's fine.
Right in there.
Well, they're not on camera, Tom, so how do we even know you play Warhammer? Jeez, I mean...
Yeah. Pixar didn't happen.
There we go. Notice he had to swing by his trophies first. That was the first goal there.
Well, just the...
Very nice, Tom. Now put your camera back before you make the audience sick. Okay. Fantastic. Now we believe you.
I play Warhammer.
There you go. Yeah, so that's fine. And then the only other news item is obviously the Giants release this Saturday.
That's not news.
As a side story on this, the Giant show will be next week. I have a lot of opinions. We're not going to talk about any of them tonight. I'm gonna
apologize to the Facehammer crew for not being there to temper you with my positivity. They will need to counterbalance you.
Well, I'm bringing in the whole Facehammer crew to sit on the other side of the scale from me.
Because, I wanted to be there to be the voice of reason and encouragement and say, hey, look, you got your nice toys. And you can push them around and smash things. It'll be great. Enjoy yourself. But instead, you're just going to get angry, grumpy Vince. I apologize. So that's my disclaimer. And I'm going to say sorry to the Facehammer guys if you guys are watching. Vince is just going to be Vince.
I'm Vince Unchained.
Mm-hmm. I swear to you, I was like 30 seconds away from just telling Brendan earlier in the week, get ready to discuss Giants. This is what we're talking about. I'm not holding this in any longer. But
I've been fine. I'd have figured it out.
Sure, but I'm going to sit on it. I'm going to play some more games. I did get a game in this weekend. We'll talk about that during hobby time. But, and I'm going to get more in this weekend. And we'll go. I'm going to have a nice, fully informed opinion. So, there we go. All right. So let's move to some pick of the week. Brendan, what would you like to direct everybody toward?
My pick of the week is for you Americans, is go and register to vote if you still can. It's your civic duty. I would say I don't care who you vote for, but I'd be lying, but I'd prefer that you just do vote.
Yes. It's good advice. It's something we haven't talked about, but it is that time. It's going on. It's October. If you're here in the U.S., in many states you can still register, and if you have already registered, don't forget to actually, do the thing and go vote. Be responsible. I hope you didn't register and then forget to vote. Many states have early voting or stuff like that. Go be safe and do it. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
We can all agree with that. There you go. There's nothing wrong with that. Tommy, what do you got?
I'm a friend of the show, Honest Wargamer. You know what? He's done a review of the Giant book.
Mm-hmm.
And to prep for your Vince conversation, I'm going to invite our viewers to go watch the Rob conversation. It might be a little bit more positive.
That's nonsense. He'll seem positive compared to me. Or sorry, I'll seem positive compared to him. Other way around. Strike that, reverse it. Rob he's coming out swinging. And I'm not saying I disagree with anything he says in that show, because I don't think I do. But here we are. So it is.
And this is what breaks my heart that I can't be there next week, because I honestly was going to be good, you guys got your giant armies, you can play armies. What's wrong?
Mm-hmm. No, that's fine. It's fine. You're not luring me into a conversation this week, Tom. I see what you're trying to do. It's not happening. Okay.
I don't know.
For my pick of the week, I've got two of them. First off, if you want more Giant reviews in advance of our show next week, Doom and Darkness also put up his review. It was really cool. So would highly recommend you go check that out. Doom is killing it as always, and he's a long-time Destruction player, so he certainly has some experience with big fat boys running around the table. So, as he's normally an ogre player, and these are just really, really big ogres, basically, right? So it was a great review. My second one would be, there was actually a really, really cool article on Warhammer Community this week I want to direct everybody to. I will link it down in the description. It is all about the how to make a display board. And I thought it was really cool. They had some really neat examples of ways to integrate their terrain or just other random stuff. And they showed some really inspiring, awesome armies on parade boards. Seriously awesome. And I thought it was super cool. I do have some really big plans for a display board for these Giants that I'm working on. No joke. I know what my display board is, and I'm very excited about it.
I can't wait.
Yeah. So, we're gonna go.
You know what I love? Let's just pause here.
Yeah, sure.
Double Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk. Let's just step away and look at the fact that look at Vince and how he's grown over the last 3 years.
It's incredible, right? I'm excited for a display board. I was excited for the last one. I hate it when I make them. I don't want to make more than one a year, but I like. But when I have an idea, I'm excited for.
That's the right answer. One a year. Like, I fully affirm what you just said.
Sure.
Because, like, you did the daughters one.
Yep.
And then you did the Slaanesh Town one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you did the Cities of Sigmar, Tempest, or the Whirlwind's Edge.
The Tempest Eye, yeah. The Whirlwind's Edge board.
And now, here we are, and we're going for Giants.
Yeah.
Just saying, like, Vince, I'm just so proud of you.
Thanks, man.
You've grown so much.
I appreciate that. We're all on a journey, Tom. We're all on a journey. Isn't that the case? So I've got some really crazy ideas for that board. And I saw Crazy Horse in the chat say, ears perk up at the sound of terrain. I may be in touch with you at some point. We'll see where we're at. I got to get these giants actually painted first. So with that, let's move on to some hobby time. Brendan, what are you working on, man? What's been on your table?
Right now, I'm working on the Underworld's Iron Jaws, the Brutes. Getting those built. Because I bought the Schwantz Iron Jaws army before the apocalypse. And so I wanted to do some, color matching scheme. And I figured the warband was perfect for that. But other than that, I've been working on my 6,000 points of Bone Reapers so that I can have my 20,000 points of death ready to play my arch nemesis and all-around good guy Bryce in a super mega battle of elves and order versus death. So I've been working on that for most of this year. But yeah, and then some terrain for my GW store.
Nice.
That's
you have a very full hobby table. You're covering all your bases here.
Yeah, I always got to be doing something. Like, and that's why I have multiple projects going at any given moment in time, because as soon as I feel slowing down in one direction, I'll just grab the other thing and I'll be like, this is different and requires a different energy, and I can do that.
Such a good piece of advice. Yes, like if you've got one thing that's actually really intensive and something you really care about and you work on, it's often good to just have a second project that's maybe more fun. Like you had the terrain piece just sitting there, right? That can just be such an easy thing to be like, I'm not really feeling it today as far as, super working hard on this. So, boom, easy. Just knock out some fast terrain. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally agreed. All right, Tom, let us down. What have you been working on?
I got a model over there on the shelf I've been working on.
Do you really?
Sure.
Got it. Okay, so you haven't done anything. I believe you. All right. All I'm saying to Tom is glue something together. That was my statement to you. Like, just glue something together. How hard can it be?
Like, I moved models around this week.
That's not anything.
I touched a model.
That's not anything.
I mean,
you don't even need glue. Just build these press fit things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're just looking. I'm looking back at your half-finished trees, Tom.
Yeah. Trees.
Yeah, you got one.
Trees.
The other two next to it that are unpainted are making me sad.
There's green moss.
It's not enough, Tom. I got to see the other two trees painted. I got to see a forest.
Well, there's 6 back there. There's 5
We got to see the other 5 painted. There you go.
Because hashtag Soloneth.
Sure. Hey, look, they just got better comparatively. So.
Oh boy.
For my own personal hobby time, I'm working on my giants, on my Frankenstein's monster creations. There's one. He's getting painted up, Mr. Skull Mask there, and more or less we're just doing some final touches on the the non-metal, because I always do the metals last. And you can see, I don't know if it's coming across, but he's got little lines where he's got different kinds of flesh all stitched together. It's very hard to hold him up. So I've just got to work some more colors into that. And yeah, he's got a bunch of different flesh tones. I think this is going to be the one where I play around with having that stitching pattern on him. I don't think I'm going to do that on all of them. I thought about doing it on all of them, but I kind of want to actually play with just different total skin tones on some of them. Have some of them be much more rotten looking. Have some of them have like be very wounded and just that kind of thing. Like so, they're all each one kind of has its own little identity and different selections of skin tones. So there you go. So yeah, that's it. He's it's not the. I mean this army will have 8 models, so I feel like it's okay to take a little bit of time. Like, it's fine.
I kind of almost expect it from people.
Right. Like, just slow down. I mean, I could paint this whole army in a weekend. It wouldn't be hard. But this would be the easiest 24-hour army ever. I'd finish with 12 hours to spare if I wanted to. But I'm only gonna get to paint 8 of these, so let's put some effort in. Let's put the old College Tryin. So there you go. And I'm really happy with. I shared out that picture of all the converted ones. I do have a 4th converted one. He's even crazier than the other ones, than the other 3. He's real madcap wacky, and I've got to get a couple more giants now or something. I want to figure out what I want to do for the last 2, because I'm going to go with 2 bigs and 6 smalls.
One, you need to put on a soul
on Soul Grinder.
Soul Grinder legs.
Would be way too big for the little guys.
Oh, would it be?
The little giants are on a 92 mil cavalry base, Tom. The Soul Grinder is on a 160 mil pie plate. It's a slightly different leg size.
Now, you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like a Mega Gargant base.
Sure. No, the Mega Gargant base, you could put him. You could put them on a Soul Grinder body if you wanted to. That thing will fit on a 130 mil round.
Like, do a Soul Grinder and combine with a Guo. So like a big boy that had to have mechanical legs to walk around.
Yeah.
And then just like putty in a bunch of like the actually you wouldn't even have to do
that's a Forge World model.
Just yeah.
Well, no, actually, like because you're going with like the gross wounded, I'll bet you could do a really interesting conversion with a Guo at like torso with the legs.
Too gross. It's not what it is. I mean, I'm going Frankenstein, not.
No, but what I'm saying is you could put like you could putty some of it and then Frankenstein a bunch of more of it, and I'll bet it would be a really interesting combination.
I think it would be an awesome combination, just not for me. So there you go.
Womp womp
womp. Paul says he wants to see a Caradron floating Mega Gargant. I mean, I have an extra frigate. I could always just have a Gargant wielding the frigate as a club, so that would be fine. I could do that. But I'm sorry, Paul, you can't have flying Gargants. That's not a thing you can do, because realm artifacts don't exist anymore. So I'm not going to model a second flying model that I heavily convert, only to have it be worthless. Okay?
Weird.
Nor is there an artifact in that book that allows you to fly. Seems like that would have made a lot of cool sense. Seems like that would have been a unique, fun thing. But that's fine. We didn't need that. It's all good. We're not talking about giants. Okay. So,
hey, you know what the best part about this is, by the way? I'm just realizing this. I may make it through year 2 of not buying a new army.
I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, it's because everything was delayed, because I strongly suspect that it depends on how these vampires shape up. Because if these vampires look like here's the honest.
But if they drop in January, I'm safe.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. You make it. But here's the honest answer. If we got an army of vampires that was basically based on, let's say, this girl in the art, right?
Yes.
Just imagine an army spun out from this girl in the art.
Sure.
That's down here, right?
Yeah.
Tell me you're not in for that army. You're in like Flynn. Assume that's kind of the aesthetic across the whole thing.
I mean, maybe so. The question is like, what are they paired with?
Sure.
Like, because what does the rest of the army look like? That's the question to me.
I get you.
We know it's all those rumor engines for the last
just put
6
together
months.
all the rumor engines. You probably got the whole models. You got the whole range.
Yeah.
We just gotta
we have
assemble the pieces.
Then we have like the web stuff and all that, and I don't know.
We'll see. Time will tell. Okay. So, awesome. All right. So, I've been working on that guy. Like I said, I got a game in this weekend. with the Giants. It was a lot of fun. It was. I lost very, very badly. Whoa boy, was it a one-sided game, but it was still fun. I'm excited to play this faction more, and I'm going to get a couple games in advance of our show next week. I might actually just play a couple games against myself. I know I have some people coming over, so I'll get a game and at least one on Saturday. But I might just roll up some games myself just to test it against other armies. So, there you go. It's just like, I mean, I can pilot my own Iron Jaws at the same time I'm piloting this, and I'm keen to see that showdown because I have a strong feeling of which way it would go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. At any rate, plus if it's me against me, then I know it's equal skill. So I can't make a skill comparison.
As an aside, since I'm not going to be here next week, let me point out that, like, man, are the Gargants well positioned in this, like, the Magic Dom era? You know how we talked about, like, Magic Doms, right?
I know what a Magic Dom. I know what a Spell Dom is. Tom.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm wondering how you're connecting these two dots. They're well positioned in the Magic Dom era to what? Die? What are you talking about?
To not have to play that game. They're playing a different game.
Oh, sure.
The point is that it hinders them not
when
at
you
all.
Basically don't have a hero phase or spells to cast or anything like that, you can just ignore that. Boom. All of the enemy unbinds, worth nothing. Those don't matter.
Worth nothing.
Those don't
Infinite unbinds on techless, wasted points.
Just delete that. It's wasted points. That's right. I don't need it. Don't need it. Get it out of here. That's right. Okay. So.
Oh boy.
I mean, no, they're in a great position to get dunked on, but sure, Tom. If what you're saying is I'm in a good position to play LeBron James in some one-on-one,
like, just be happy. It's like you got your book, you get to push your Giants around and go roar. It'll be fine.
I am happy. I didn't say I wasn't happy. All right, cool. Let's talk about this week's topic. All right.
No, let's talk about Giants.
No, we're not. He keeps bringing me in. I can't help it. All right. We're here to talk about OBR. So let's get to the OBR of the thing. So since we last visited our Bone Daddies, there's been some changes. There has been some changes. And mainly, I mean, like, there's a little bit of points move. And I would argue the right direction. In that some things came down. And then
the direction was right, the magnitude was wrong.
Sure. And that's potential. Like there are still pieces of this army that I think basically you don't see on the table, right? And I think that's one of the things we want to talk about.
Right.
He was exactly yep. We're gonna have a little discussion about them. About both of those variants, as a matter of fact. Okay.
Good.
Yeah. We're gonna get into them. So obviously the big nerf was in depowering Petrifex Elite. And whatever, we're not gonna relitigate the past. It happened, it is where it is, right? And Petrifex is no longer the preeminent choice amongst all of the legions. The facts of the matter were that something like 99-point-something% of recorded AOS reminder lists were PE lists, right? So that says they had a pretty overwhelming dominance as far as choice in the meta. That is obviously
that sounds fine.
Sure,
nope, that sounds
nothing
fine.
wrong with that. Seems fine.
Check.
So everything's fine
out here. Everything's fine.
So, but now what we've seen is that with that change, they're still showing up in tournament results. They're getting some top 10s. They're clearly a contender. Honestly, if you look at AOS Shorts shared a really wonderful breakdown of all recent tournaments that have been happening around the world in places where tournaments can happen, and it was a really cool mix of different armies. And OBR was one of them in the mix, right? He went down to. Do you go down to, I think, 5th place or 6th place in that breakdown? I think something like that. And you would see a fair amount of OBR in there. So, I think that's, like, to me, they feel like they've fallen into a good spot where my take on them right now is they're right overall win percentage where they want to be. That doesn't mean we still shouldn't make some changes to improve some things in the army. I think we do need to, and that's what we'll talk about. There's always
they needed to diversify their stocks.
Correct. Yeah. There's things we can make to diversify the number of lists that are out there, right? Without necessarily like juicing up the power level of the army. And but I feel like they're competitive and they're interesting, and I dig that they have a sort of way. They've got a sort of game plan that they can execute on of this kind of attrition battle that is kind of unique amongst all of the I wouldn't say completely unique, but it is a pretty thin lane. There's not a lot of people who play like they do. Narratively, I think that is to say, they have a story. We talked about ludonarrative dissonance last week, and this is one of those armies that actually matches pretty darn accurately for me. They're supposed to be this phalanxy, militarily highly organized force that marches forward and grinds down the enemy, and that is still often how they feel to a large extent, with like using cav as flankers and yada yada yada. But that's my take on it. Brendan, you're playing obviously a lot more than me. What's your current read on the army?
So I think they're still in a good place, where with Petrifex they existed in, using the tiering system that is totally objective, where they lived in that S tier with like 2 super hard counters.
Right.
They now, I think, live in kind of that A range, not the high end of A, but they live in that A block.
Solid competitive.
Exactly, where there are more matchups you don't want to see than what you saw before, but overwhelmingly you feel really good going into just about every mission and almost every matchup, where you feel that you have a plan that you can execute on. And some lists do certain things better than others, but I think that's one of the really nice things about the book, is that you can have really distinct plans and execute really differently to another, 3, 4, 5 Bone Reaper players who are also there with competitive intent.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So, I think that it's funny because we made the joke, and I think there is still some truth to it, that everything in the army costs 200 points, right? It's like you're dividing the army into 200-point blocks.
It's certainly close to that.
Right. Please don't actually me in the comments. I understand that there are in fact points difference. It doesn't just say 200 all the way down. It's a bit of a joke, a bit of hyperbole, but there is some truth to it at the same time, right? That a lot of things feel like you're kind of saying, well, I'll swap out this 200-ish point thing for this other 200-ish point thing, right? And those choices ultimately affect very much how the army, the sort of capabilities, and I think most importantly, what matchups they're strong in and what matchups they'll have to play, that they might be slightly on the back foot, need to play stronger against. I think the pieces you choose to round out that last, let's call it 600 points or 400 points, can often be the difference, like in certain matchups, right? It often makes the matchup difference. This tool will make matchup A quite easy, but matchup B quite hard. Flip to a different set of tools, and it switches right around.
I think that's fair.
And you're just rolling dice, like as to who you end up in those final, like on tables 4 and 5, or on games 4 and 5, day 2. Like you're choosing in general one track over the other as to which is going to be stronger on your matchups, and then just hoping that you match against not that thing, not the thing that you're weak against.
All right.
So
first question, Brendan. Is the new hotness Mortis Praetorians? Is that what you've been rolling, or what have you been rolling?
So my list didn't change except for switching from Petrifex to Mortis and then switching the mandatory artifact from those. My list didn't change a single point otherwise. Because I was taking Catacros, and obviously the +1 to save wasn't a thing in the Petrifex because I had it universally, and cool, sounds good. I get the same thing, except obviously it comes a turn later, and the difficulty in my list is that it lives in that at 5 drop, so it's just above that kind of sweet spot of 4, and it's well below. You're not getting to a 1. You're well below that stuff that just is gonna drop down, shoot you hard, and it is what it is. And that was the nice thing about having the 3-up right from the start. So the shooting matchup is a little bit tougher, but ultimately the list I like taking didn't change. I think it gives more incentive to look at and run things like Stalyarch Lords, where you had, and I'm so sorry, I forget the guy's name, the guy who runs all the murder ponies and Nagash.
Yeah, the gentleman from Australia, who ran at CanCon. One of my favorite lists I've seen played, Nagash and all the ponies. It was so amazing to watch it play. It was still my favorite OBR list I've ever seen played. Yeah,
it's fantastic, but even if you get away from that list, I was playing a Stalyarch Lords list with a mix of Mortek Guard and some Stalkers and some horses against just some of my local guys here who wanted to just play some games, and just being in Stalyarch Lords makes it a totally different army. The time or two where I've played like a Crematorians list to go out there and just kind of have fun, boy, that's got some punch to it as well. The only one that really doesn't do anything for you at all is Ivory Host, and that is still a hot piece of garbage. But I think the thing that's most interesting is that Petrifex still has a place, in the same place that Stalyarch has a place, and Praetorians has value and things like that. If you're expecting to go to an event and that you're going to need that extra bit of rend every turn, sounds good to me. Like that's you get this can opener tool, which is nice through all the sub factions. There still really isn't a lot of value in not running any sub-faction, which is disappointing. Because none of the command traits live up to the extra rules and command abilities that you get. But
I'll say it's so rare that they nail that. Like, the only book I can think of where that's really something you tend to see,
where they've created a real choice.
Yeah, outside of Beast of Chaos, where it's not the same exact thing, would be FEC post Gristlegore nerf, right? Because the Feast Day thing is really good, and you're like, yeah, that's a really good ability. It might be worth having that freedom on the opportunity cost. I can see it, but yeah. So I think in general, when you look at most of the things where they introduce sub factions, they suddenly become basically compulsory. Yeah.
I think Praetorians is in first, but the difference between first and second isn't anywhere near as significant as it was.
Yeah, right. And it's transformative. So when you do play those other things, you're actually getting to have a different experience at the table.
Right.
Like when you have running charge on everybody, that's a different experience. For like Stalyarch Lords.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that, I still wish it didn't overlap with the battalion like it does, but I suppose it means that you don't have to necessarily have the battalion. There are certainly strats you can play too that are just like, I'll be all the drops and who really cares. So that's fine. Like there are many armies right now in the meta that are running on the I have a million drops and I don't care. Like I never get to choose who goes first and it doesn't matter any to me because I can handle that. And I think that this army could be built that way. Yeah, so I tend to agree. I think Mortis is still probably going to shake out to be the most popular, but it'll be more of a plurality, slight majority situation than it'll be 99.x%, right? Which is a slightly different scenario, right?
Very much so.
Yeah, it's a little different. Okay. So yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, when I look at Mortis Praetorians, assuming of course, like let me just get this out on the table. I am assuming that if you're running Praetorians, you have Catacross in your list. I mean, does that seem like a fair assumption? Would you build the list without him?
I could see you doing it for the intent of taking Xantos specifically and leaning heavy on his ability to mega super buff the catapults for the wound reroll.
Okay. So if you're going for kind of a skew strat into the catapults, that would be the way. Okay, I could see that.
Yeah, there's some really cool lists I've seen pop up recently that has Catacross and 2 catapults, and a Bone Shaper and then some more tech and like a unit of horses, and I looked at that and I was like, oh, you got everything. That's nice. Like,
right.
Cool.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going swing for the fences, you take Xantos.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I mean, let's get into some of the unit discussions. Okay. Because I'm just laughing because Tomb King Tristan showed up in the chat and he does not have a favorable opinion of this army as it displaced his love. But such is life. The forest burns away so that new trees can grow. So I want to talk about old Krakatoa here, Mr. Catacross. As I was reading, I was rereading his scroll earlier because I'll this is one of the armies I don't play. And I don't get to play it very often just because nobody in my regular gaming group has collected this army. It didn't really grab anybody.
That's too bad. You need new friends.
I get to play a nice wide selection. But this is just not one of them. I don't know why. Nobody liked this army. In fact, we don't have many death players, period, which I consider an advantage. That's what I like about my club. Low on death. Very small percentage of death players, so positive there. But I was rereading this guy, and, look, man. Like I said, I'm not going to refer everything back to this. But, reading this guy after reading all the giant war scrolls, I was like, what is going on here? Look at all the stuff on this guy. My God, he does so much stuff. He really is just a very interesting utility piece in the sort of things that he allows, the way that he plays. What's been your experience with him? Like, you said you had him in your list anyways. So what's your experience?
I have not played a single tournament game without him. He is my favorite model. I loved painting him. I put so much work into it. I love the war scroll. I love what he does. This is my favorite character in the game of Warhammer. At the time when I played you that first time, Vince, it was Nagash.
Yep. Sure.
And then, Catacross is everything I loved about my early Warhammer experience with Nagash, where you have to do all this just forward thinking and planning to be able to execute on what it is that you've paid for.
Sure.
Great. And I almost never get him in combat.
Sure. I think especially when, I don't think if the game is going right for you, then the best case is he's not fighting. That's not his purpose.
Yeah.
He's just out there moving the game in a lot of other ways through all of his little helpers, right? And his command abilities that are juicing people up to 11. And he's just kind of content to overlook the battlefield from his perch, right? That's ultimately where he's going to be, I think, used the best, because his little companion abilities are all,
they're bananas, Vince. They're insane.
Right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're meaningful. Yes.
I have broken people's ability to win games early with just 2 turns in a row of rolling a 4-up and them having not done any wounds to Catacross, and then rolling another 4-up on the terrain piece. That unit's -2 to hit, and it's not going to do anything until I tell you that it can do something.
Right.
And they go, what? I said, yeah, I just get to pick one, and then this one I roll for, and that's it. And also I have your command points. So you didn't bring any to start, so you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's so impactful what it's doing to the enemy's play, right? This guy just existing. That's why I think it's fascinating. We've got a 500 point, 20 wound hero, right?
Yeah.
That you look at it and you go, I don't care if this guy ever swings a weapon or makes an attack. He's going to earn his points back in so many different ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's such a good... Not that he can't fight, because obviously if he does get wounded and blah, 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 we can talk about what his damage output looks like, and everybody knows the story, as he gets more wounded, yes, he can actually do some decent damage and blah, blah. But at that point, he's become a totally different hero, and I think his real power in the army is definitely force multiplier, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because I just think that's ultimately going to be way more impactful than him rolling into a unit at his sort of best attack profile, hitting with everything, wounding with everything that's left, and them failing every save is still not going to be as impactful to the overall state of play as if all of his companions were around and you succeeded on all that stuff instead.
Yeah, that's totally fair, Vince. And it took me quite a bit of time to actually learn the best way to use him, because I was just coming off of 6 months of very competitive tournament play with Flesh Eater Courts, and then another 3 with Slaanesh. And so my mindset was in this super aggro setting. And I think the first game I played, I was playing against, my buddy Dave, who was rolling out Moth Tribes. And I charged Catacross in. He's my expensive hero that I've paid for. He's got all this cool stuff. We'll throw him in there. And, he just got minced. And I was like,
oof.
But the Catacross, the rules. And he goes, yeah, I guess you die. I'm like,
oh. Yeah, I guess you die.
He doesn't seem very good. And so I scrapped those lists for a little bit. I played the army, and after another 6 game, I was like, I get it. I totally get how this character works. And we racked up another game, and I used him, and I was like, now this character makes sense to me.
Yeah.
This is why he's 500 points, and this is what he's supposed to do.
Right. Right. And to me, this is actually another great example of how this army works so well narratively, why there's not dissonance here, because he
feels like a real general.
Yeah, he feels like a real general, right? He's not up in the scrum on the front line fighting. I'm not saying generals never were. I mean, whatever. There's Alexander the Great type generals or whatever. But my point is, he feels like the sort of military phalanx commander who's back directing troops, moving pieces around, influencing the battlefield through communications and other sort of that kind of thing, right? By turning his force into an efficient fighting machine. And he plays like that. He feels like that.
Yeah, he's more traditional Roman than he is ancient battlefield commander.
Right. Yep, 100%. Okay, cool. Yeah, I agree. I dig him. I think he's such a powerhouse piece and so unique in the way he feels and plays too. All right.
So cool.
And let's be honest, one of the more beautiful models that they've created in a long time. That diorama that is his model is pretty gorgeous, right?
Yeah, it is a great model.
Okay. I want to talk about this army as a gatekeeper. Okay?
Okay.
Here is the argument I'm going to advance, and I'm interested for you both of your feedback. Okay.
Okay.
Here is my supposition. The presence of catapults in this army, and the way that their damage is structured, allows this army to be a gatekeeper in a very particular way in both the threat that it poses to 5 wound, especially low armored heroes, utility buff heroes who have no other purpose, where they could just be removed. In the way it can thin low armor larger hordes, and also the way it can just take down. So things like, things where you have relatively low or static armor save pieces, 4 up, 5 up, powerhouse glass cannon stuff, bloodthirsters, whatever, pick your greater demon story or whatever these things are. The ability to just say that thing is either dead or extremely wounded, to remove those utility heroes, is one of the most gatekeepery things about this army that actually makes it such a threat you have to think of as a non-OBR player in your list building, regardless of whether the OBR player actually ends up taking catapults. You understand what I mean? It's shaping your decisions before you ever got to the table. That is my argument. How does that feel to both of you?
I think that sounds totally reasonable. And I like the disclaimer at the end of, even if the Ossiarch Bone Reaper player doesn't include that in their list building, because up until that point I was like, well, I think the army as a whole ends up being gatekeeper-esque in nature, with the level of armor save you can put out there, and the Wrens side by side, and also the catapults with it.
Yep.
But you're absolutely right with the and this is one of the things that Meph really likes to hark on, and the reason I don't run catapults is they don't roll well for me, so they don't make it to the table. But that the catapults force you to have to engage with an army that you don't want to be engaging with.
Right.
It like the whole board becomes just a bad place to be.
Yeah. You know what it like? This is going to sound perhaps like a strange analogy, but this is what it feels like to me. Did you ever play or play against Bretonians in, like, let's say, 7th or 8th edition?
No.
Okay. So Bretonians is obviously it's a militarily organized army. They rely on very particular formations, right? You have your long lance formation, as opposed to like how these guys run or whatever. You have as opposed to sort of a phalanx style. You have a mostly melee-based army that's trying to get in and, you know, put pressure on certain points. In this case, it was more about like the charge and breaking a unit than it was about just kind of being able to stand there in a trit, you know, or whatever. But same kind of general game plan. But always the critical piece to success in because I played Bretonians quite a bit, was that I'd have 2 catapults, two trebuchets, right, in the back. And the trebuchets made it so the enemy army couldn't just sit there and like, if I had to sit back, because oftentimes with your lances you had to take a couple turns to like reposition, to line up your charges, to get exactly where you needed to be. And if you didn't have any pressure on the enemy army, they could just be ignoring you, right? It changed the way they played during the game.
Right.
And I think that this catapult feels like, I know this whole army takes some homage or inspiration from the Tomb Kings, who obviously also had a catapult. But in the Tomb Kings, I never felt compelled to have the catapult. It wasn't a necessary part of the army. My Brets always felt like they wanted it, right? To just talk about all the dead armies. So that this feels very similar in its play to me, and the pressure it puts on the enemy army. That's my thoughts. You know? And I'll say,
so
go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I was going to ask Tom. Obviously, it's a little bit different. But how has this? Because I'm quite biased. Where basically for nothing but a year, all I've done is think about and paint death models in my Bone Reapers. Yep. Like how has this approached the way that you look at your lists? Because I know that you're not. Most of your lists haven't been like that super high-end shooting stuff, which is the obvious, like, easy way to handle all this. Right. Like, how have you been approaching this problem?
Yeah, I think that for me, like, the big... So OBR is a really interesting conundrum, because for me, it's a gatekeeper army in a different way.
Okay.
I don't think about catapults. I don't think about catapults because people don't take them. And if people take them, I'm going to put a unit right next to them and make them so they can't shoot. So that's fine. But that's not what concerns me. What concerns me for OBR as an army, as a gatekeeper, is knowing that I may be staring down like an army-wide 3-up.
Sure. Yeah, with some of those re-rolling, right?
Right, with some of those re-rolling with Mortis Praetorian. And there's a very real possibility with that in Catacross, like the...
Yeah, it's basically what my list is, where it's Catacross, a Bone Shaper, a bunch of Mortec Guard, and a Lance.
Yeah, and so the reality is that I'm staring down a lot of very hard armor. And if I'm not in the right build, it becomes a real issue real quick. And so, I think about something like let's say I'm running KO. Suddenly target priority becomes really important, because I have to get Catacross off the table. And the problem is in a list like that, it's really hard to get him off the table with good positioning.
Sure.
And if I get anything into combat, they're probably going to get ground up. Although with Mortis Praetorian, they don't have the improved Ren, so that does mean something. So for me, it is a high, like, at the end of the day, it is a hurdle, and it is a high army or a high save army that you need to have some way to deal with. And it's not always obvious. right? And so some armies, I think, are really going to struggle to punch through Brennan's layers of Mortec. Yeah. And so I even think about like Fire Slayers. Yes, they'll be able to grind through, but his mobility from his horses are gonna outrun any of the large blocks. And so there's some really some significant challenges that the army brings that you have to think around during list design.
Sure. Well, no, it's funny too, because sometimes those two things, I don't disagree with you. I love that idea that it gatekeeps in these two separate ways. Both of which, by the way, I don't think are bad. I think it's actually a positive thing that it's out there. I like that there are those kinds of things in the meta. For example, I've said that like the sort of the spellcasting level, like it's the same reason I was defending Nagash. I loved him as a spell dom in the meta because him out there as a boogeyman and the percentage he was generally showed up was really interesting in what he did with magic and how it incentivized using magic in your list, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And we can have a discussion of whether or not we've gone too far into the spell dom meta now that we've got, everything Tzeentch does and everything he does, and Croak and everybody else. So, Teeklis, which I think is the proper pronunciation, right? Teeklis? Yeah, he's called Teeklis. That's his name. Teeklis, brother of Tyron. You know him. Okay, so, at any rate, it's interesting because oftentimes those two work against each other. What I mean by that is like, okay, if I'm going to punch through the armor, I want to take these kinds of maybe high-rend shooting units, right? Where I can get around their best defenses, right? I can shoot them before they can put the buff up, or I can engage them at range without threat of a pushback, or whatever.
Move the key piece or whatever.
Yeah, where maybe they're not re-rolling, whatever the case is, right? So that's kind of the strat. The problem is those same things are often the units that end up becoming very susceptible to the catapult build, right? Because they tend not to have the defense to withstand the catapult shots. And so it ends up being this interesting balance where you're kind of making a bet one way or the other, right? And if it works out in your favor, hey, great, maybe you'll get across. But if it doesn't, wham, you fell right into their trap.
Which is exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Because the reality is that when I look at it, I'm just not thinking about catapults.
Right. Yes. You've chosen your lane, right? And
you've
said the lane you're going to care about is the sort of high armor and what we do about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay. So, yeah, I think to me, catapults just they're such a fascinatingly singular threat. They dominate my thinking when I think about this army. I'm almost on the other side, Tom, right? Because in the end, with high armor, I'm like, well, there are ways to get around that. There are mortal wounds. There are things I can, that there are armies I can tend to figure out with the armies I play answers to that kind of thing. But when I look at those catapults and I'm like, they're going to lift off this and this and this, right? At the top of one or in one before I do anything with them. And there's nothing I'm going to have to say about that, right? Yep. I really came to feel this playing Slaanesh. That was like, that was the time when I really felt it. I was like, that keeper is a bad roll away from just ceasing to exist at the top of one, right?
Which is crazy, right? Because like at the time you're sitting, like that was the pinnacle of Slaaneshi nonsense. And part of me really wishes that like Slaanesh had stayed at that peak for a little bit for people to have the time to get Bone Reapers on the table, because I think people would have viewed Slaanesh differently if there was this kind of natural predator that was lurking around to handle that business.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and I mean, I was happy with the first nerf. I don't know about the next three, but that's okay. That's not this show. That's fine. It's all good. We're moving
Tonight we're going to talk about Giants and Slaanesh, what everybody thought.
Exactly the OBR show. No, fine. No, okay, cool. Okay. Next unit I want to talk about. Brendan, what's your feeling on harvesters? Where do you sit on the great harvester debate?
I love the way they look. I love what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
I have just like catapults, I have not gotten them to be able to do what they're supposed to do. Okay. Yeah. In my game 3 at Wapaka, I ran across another Bone Reaper player who was playing Catacross and Arcan and a Harvester, and a 40 brick and like 2 10s or something like that.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And the Harvester did kind of what the Harvester was supposed to do. He kept Arcan going, he kept Catacross going, and then eventually I just swarmed him with too many bodies because I was getting +1 to hit from Catacross and +1 to hit from his Bone Tithe Nexus, which was sad and hilarious. And I was just like, here you go, bunch of extra attacks and extra rend. See you later, Catacross. This is fine. And once Catacross dropped, that was it. I had the miner locked up, and I knew I was going to win that game. But that's the one time I've seen the Harvester truly do like what it's supposed to be doing in terms of like what the rules are. The offensive output on it is phenomenal. Just super great and fantastic and amazing, but
surprising.
That's not...
honestly, surprising.
Yeah.
The first time I got into a fight with one of those, I was like, "What?"
Ouch!
It's just like, that I didn't expect that thing to hit that hard. Yeah.
Ouch! But like, I have always found like that 200 point slot. I feel like I can always be spending better. Like there's. And maybe it's just like the way I play. I'm sure there's somebody sitting in chat who's just like, I know what you're talking about. I run 2 Harvesters and they're great. And every time I do it, it works fantastic. And I'm like, man, good for you. Like, post a battle report because I want to learn.
Yeah.
I just can't seem to get that engine going. I see the value. I see the way it probably works. I just haven't been able to move that theoretical into the practical and say, this is how it works consistently.
Gotcha. Yep. Do you think it's army? Well, let me put it this way. Do you think it's the meta you're largely experiencing? I'm not talking about the grand whole world meta, whatever. Because in my mind, if you're fighting mostly sort of melee-ish, grindy armies that want to just get up and have a punch-up directly with you, okay, the Harvester's going to pay insane dividends because he can largely be sheltered and protected and just kind of go nuts, raining or just regenning people, right? And the enemy's gonna have to work really hard to remove it because they've got to get around your probably almost pseudo bubble wrap of this dude, right? Yeah. Whereas if your meta, whatever you're experiencing, the games you're playing against are people who can really project power, more range, more spellcasting power, more ability to just kind of reach out and go whammo blammo, that thing takes 6 mortal wounds, right? Or whatever. And there's plenty of armies out there that can just be like, that thing right there I don't like, that takes 6 mortal wounds, right? Like, that's not a weird thing. And then it's only a little bit of more splash to bring that thing down, right? So, I think if you're in that kind of meta, it suddenly shifts. You're like, it's a very swingy piece, is what I'm arguing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, when you talk about the meta I play in, I think the best way I would describe it is I'm mostly concerned about that day 2, games 4 and 5.
Sure.
I'm sure that's the way you approach things too, Tom. And in those matchups with those day 2 armies I'm expecting to see, it's just it just never has the same value as that 10 extra Mortek guard and the other remaining points that buys my Cavalos Lance kind of thing.
Sure.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I the other thing is I don't think it needs to be cheaper. Like the rules are good. It does good things.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy.
It just has to do with like how it fits.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's a question of is it too good or too bad. I think it's appropriate that it has a counter, right? It just means that the value of the piece is going to largely be dependent on the natural predators that are out there. Right? I don't think that's weird. I think that's a good thing.
Right.
I think it's a fixture if you're going to be running crematorians, but that's a very different play style that I haven't explored in that kind of expansive way that I have with my Praetorians and Petrifex, and I'm starting to do with Staliarch. Could be, that might be the magic home of it, where it doesn't matter what your round 4 and 5 opponents are. This is just the thing that makes that engine tip over.
Yeah. Right. Okay, cool. Hey, let's talk about the big boys. All right. I'm gonna group the big boys together, into. I'm gonna somewhat cheat here, okay?
The keyword Hekatos units.
And say like, yeah, exactly. So we're talking Immortus Guard, right? We're talking Necropolis Stalkers, and I'd also like to talk about the Archai and the Harbingers, right? All the big boys, your generic big boys, right? And those, I understand those units are not exactly equivalent, of course. I know that there's a difference, but
I mean, got some good size.
Yeah,
you know,
they're all big boys. Yeah,
they're close enough.
Yeah,
they're all sitting here.
They're your quote unquote big boys. We can start.
There's a reason they've spent this long on the painting desk, where the 100 Mortek Guard have gotten done.
Weird.
Before. Yeah, don't know why. Could be anything.
Okay. I've seen some people recently starting to discuss the idea of 6 stalkers in the list. Okay. And how this could be valuable. And there's been a lot of chat. I keep tabs on the Ossiarch Bone Reapers chat. It's an interesting chat. One of the things I like about that one is that one's actually very tactical. A lot of times, like, a lot of the chats aren't there. It depends on the different armies being in different places. Some people just share lists. Some people just share painted models. The Bone Reapers chat is so often about very tactical decisions of exactly what about this and this too? It's always the 400 points. It's always the discussion.
So like, you're saying the Ludo narrative, it just feels right.
Yeah, like it's a lot of very careful generals planning their forces. So I think this army attracts a certain psychographic profile of person.
That's fair. We're all a little bit nuts. Yeah, that's...
Okay.
The big boys.
Yes. So, all right. Tom, what's your general feeling on these kinds of elite troops? What's holding this kind of stuff back? Do you fear this kind of stuff? When you see these kind of figs on the table, what's your thought pattern?
I mean, like, I've been playing a lot of ranged units, and so they just don't really fear this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. These are not going to hold objectives well, and they're going to die pretty easily. Like, relatively. Obviously, it's a defensive one. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, it's 24. Like, if you're talking about, let's just take Stalkers, for example, and you got a unit of 6. I mean, it's 24 wounds on a 4-up save. Right?
Yep.
And then whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
So, it's fine. Right? Like, it's not something that is overwhelmingly concerning. Should I say that? Like, it's, yeah, I in general, because I know that, like, this sounds terrible, but when I see that, I go, oh, wow, okay, well, that could be worse. You know, they could have spent those points more efficiently. So, yeah, I'll take that.
Okay.
Can we for, like, 1 second address the thing that Tom is saying there? And I know exactly what he's talking about. That moment you walk up to the table and you be like, "Oh, interesting, a suboptimal unit. It's nice to meet you." I'll take my 20 points now, sir. Thank you. That's
like, you're not wrong. Like, when I see that, I go, "Okay." Like, there's this. This is gonna sound terrible. Like, there's this moment of breathing easier.
I'm guilty of it too. So like let's have this moment of therapy and address like what the reality is.
Where I'll see that and go, okay, well, this will be a fun game. Like, because I know that the decisions that have been made in list building are suboptimal, and what that means is that the decisions that are being made, if those decisions are being made ahead of time, I understand the type of mentality that the game is being like what's being taken into the game. That's not a dig on those people at all. So please don't hear that. Does that make sense?
Because the other side of the coin is, because this was my first introduction to you. We didn't meet, but I was following along with some of the things that you were doing, which was you were looking to squeeze all of the blood from the rock of, kind of some suboptimal choices individually, and I think the most famous version of it was the "You Can't Hit Me" Nurgle list.
Right.
That's something that you're always looking for. So, like when I say that there is a Deathglaive list in this book that I think works, which includes varieties of big boys. There's a difference there where Where if you've spent the time with the books, you look at it and you go, oh, I see. And that's almost the reverse, where you're like, what sort of crafty tricks is this player, going to be handing out to me?
Right. And so one of the challenges is that so for me on the other side of the table, I want to roll up to the table with the suboptimal list, because I want them to look at what I'm bringing to the table and go, oh, this is going to be an easy game. Right?
It's list judo.
Yeah, it is. Like, I'm wanting to set myself up to be in a position to pull the rug out from underneath my opponent. Okay. And so that's a little bit into my own psychology of that's the mix of Johnny and Spike that I am.
Sure.
But for me, most other people don't have that similar psychographic profile, or they're not operating in that way. So when I see suboptimal choices in list building, it sets me at ease for the game.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry for derailing your show, Vince.
No, that was a really good discussion. You didn't derail anything. That's exactly what this is all about. So, but here's my question. What makes these guys weighted more interesting as a choice? What has to happen? Okay? And I'll take any example. You can pick any of the 4 potential units here. And as I said, there's already some people exploring stalkers. So is it just easy enough that there's some way to turn on them being battle line? Is it really that simple?
So I think that fixes 2 things.
Okay.
Bringing stalkers and Immortus Guard specifically into battle line. If you want to bring Morghast in as well, you make them battle line if to Ivory Host.
Okay.
And it suddenly actually provides value to the objectively worst of the sub-factions, because now you don't have to sit there, and you don't even have to change the points. Because right now, part of the problem that they suffer from is I find that when I'm taking that 180 points of stalkers, I look at it and I go, I could also have 170. I could have 170 points of murder ponies, which are faster, and they don't do as much damage, but they're comparable. They have a similar number of wounds, and they do some good damage. And I go, okay, but they are faster, and that's important.
Right.
Or I could have 130 points of Mortec Guard, and then the 50 points extra towards whatever the next thing is. And I go, well, technically Mortec Guard have fewer wounds, but the nature of their shield and their combined offense, they're a more reliable choice. But they are slower, but not that much slower. Mm-hmm. I always find that because you have to have that battle line, so at a minimum, you're spending 390 points on battle line. You're a fifth of the way through your points for that army, and you haven't even purchased a hero.
Right.
In an army with expensive heroes.
Yeah. I think if these are your battle line, there's a lot of value. And then you also pair it with the rules in Ivory Host, where if you're damaged, you get +1 to hit. There is a lot of value in the abilities that the things like the stalkers have, and then it also gives value because you're losing. I think you lose a save or something ridiculous.
You're right.
To take the defensive aspect on the stalkers. I think that's a thing in Ivory Host that still has to be fixed, but
Sure. I mean, we can talk about how that was just a bad choice. I think universally, everybody we all agree that the fact that Ivory Host has this weird penalty trade-off and it's to the save is just so crazy bonkers bananas. It's when compared against everything else, if all of the hosts work that way, right? If every host had some thing that was you gain this, but you lose this, then okay, we'd be on different footing. But when you're the only one who has that, it just doesn't make any sense, right? So, yeah.
I think pushing them into that battle line role in that specific sub-faction, I think would do some interesting things, to your list. Do I think it makes Immortus Guard something you take? No, I do not. I think Immortus Guard need more help than that. But when you're looking at the things like Stalkers and the Morghast, suddenly they hit on 2s for having taken damage, and you want them in the fight anyways? Mm-hmm. Okay, that sounds good to me. Let's let's do that. And you don't have to have a Catacross, pulling that weight. You don't have to have a spellcaster with the Bone Tithe Shrieker spell out there and in the right place. They become self-contained. They have the Hekatos keyword, so they can spend the command abilities themselves. The difference is 200 points in terms of your min battle line, but now you don't have to worry about like, oh god, what do I do with these 30 Mortek Guard that doesn't fit what this list is doing at all.
Right. All right, let me pitch a scenario at you, okay?
Okay.
Pitch this to both of you. Sometime next year, OBR shows up in one of these dual boxes.
Sure.
Okay? So like our Shadow and Pain or whatever the new one's called, that's Slaanesh versus Doc, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Aether War or whatever. We all know what I'm talking about. The most common thing we get in these boxes is a new hero for each faction. Right? Like, this is what happens.
Yep.
So OBR shows up, and what they get is some kind of new hero that makes both of the, like, let's call it our Endrin Master with dirigible suit kind of dude, right?
Yeah.
Some kind of stalker-ish hero or whatever, right? That makes these guys battle line. How much of a game changer is this for the army? Assume he's about the same amount. Like all heroes who aren't Catacross, assume he's about 200 points, right? So he's somewhere in that range and does things appropriate to that amount, right?
That's sizable. That's a big deal, I think. Because you don't have to spend your point on the Mortek Guard. Now, again, Mortek Guard are great. I own 100 of them. They're all painted. It's a nightmare. But, like, you're not left with these, like, weird things that don't fit. Like, you can take your Liege Cavalos on horse that keeps up with them. He gives them the bonuses to attacks. But you just have these huge murder bricks that, like, Stalkers hit things, and those things disappear.
Sure.
They don't last very long on the return in a lot of cases, but disappear. Like, you are suddenly you have 3 builds that you have to be concerned with as a gatekeeper. The high armor build that Tom is worried about, the catapult build that Vince is worried about, and this, like, insane don't stick your hand in the blender build that Vince has created for us from the vaults.
Right. Just from cut from whole cloth, yeah. No, I agree, and that's why I love that idea so much, right? Because you hit on exactly what I was hoping we would get to. It does feel like it would open up an entirely new version, quote unquote, whatever pick the word you like there, right? Of the army, and to me, that's always like one of the most rewarding things. It's what I'm hoping happens with the Doc Snake hero, right? Is that it opens up the Snake playstyle and that kind of thing, and it's sort of a different build than just charging forward with Witch Elves. So I think that could be the same thing here for this.
Immortus Guard are still garbage. Like a hero, like a special hero that makes them battle line doesn't fix them. Like, they need to be 140 points before, like, you even think about taking them. Offensively, they don't do enough. Defensively, they don't serve the purpose that you want them to. They don't protect the heroes as much as you'd like them to. Like, it just becomes this, like, weird extra, like, 200-point thing to your 130-point character. So now that character is 330 points and also doesn't do anything.
Right. Okay.
God, their command ability is so terrible. They only fight with their shields. Oh my gosh.
I wish they had, like, this. Go ahead.
They're great models. They look so cool. I love painting them. But they are just not what they need to be. Sure.
I wish they had a build that was like the Shield Knight build, where they just have all shields, no weapons. It's just like holding 2 shields. They could just, like, run huge.
I'd feel better about it.
Sure. At least they
would. At least you'd have a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Tom, what haven't we covered this bit that are your thoughts with OBR? Like, what haven't we touched on yet that you see as,
where
like,
do you all think Arkan is now?
It's a great question, Mr. Arkan the Black.
With Petrifex going out the window, right? Where he doesn't get the +1 save. I guess you could run him with Catacross and make like a build your own Nagash kind of character. But to me, that's like I keep my hands away from that. That's just too much in a army that's so light on things.
Right.
I found in my games without that being a 3-up, he's really underwhelming. You can't be as aggressive with him as you wanted to be. The protection of Nagash stacking is gone, which was, you're losing the 6-up, so now it's merely a 4-up, 5-up, as opposed to a 3-up, 5-up, 6-up.
Yeah.
That was huge. Having the extra rend on all of his attacks in Petrifex was just bonkers. I don't rate him as highly, but I've not ever really found the strong desire to take him. But I think the changes have really removed him from being a common selection, as well as Nagash from being like a uncommon selection into the rare category.
Yeah.
Obviously, that Stalyarch list thrives on Nagash being in it, but that's a total edge case. Like, you're not going to see Nagash and them boys, as it were, from back in the day.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. There's no value there.
Right.
Like the value used to be in Petrifex, where everybody's getting the +1 to save. So they were all on 3s, Nagash was on 2s, and everybody had to reroll 1s.
Yep.
And the increased rend. Like, all of that synergy worked together. But now, like, it's just a lot more... It's just not as spectacular.
Well, and also the ground shifted underneath him, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's be honest. He got the environment he exists in, as we've said many times, has now gotten much more full of his natural predators, right?
Right.
Like, there is a lot more power projection. I'm not just going to say ranged attacks, because that's not true. Although it is true, it's not the whole story, right? There's a lot more power projection. There are skinks throwing 80 bajillion little, blow darts, and there are Sallies spitting around, and there are, people dropping spells at big distances and doing lots of damage out of, mirrors and stuff like that. And yes, he's a good counter to a lot of spellcasters. He has a great bonus, don't get me wrong. Like, the fact that he's always 2 to cast, well, not always, but the fact that he starts, I should say, 2 to cast and 2 to unbind a spell is potent. But there are people who can match and exceed those bonuses now floating around, right?
Easily. Yeah. And they're common things, where he was kind of like that mid to high end caster, and you're like, yeah, I feel good. Like, as long as my opponent wasn't Tzeentch or, Khorne, or somebody that brought just a bunch of casters to the field, you're like, I feel good in most matchups. Like what you're saying, Vince, now you're just like, yeah, okay, cool. You got 3 spells, you're +2. Neat. That's this guy over here.
Right, exactly. That's cool. This dude does 4 spells at +4, so now I'm going to crush you like an insignificant bug. It's just like, wow.
Yep. That was a fun 400 points. Like,
right, exactly.
I could have had 2 catapults.
I won't point out that the guy that casts like that is probably cheaper than Archon. So, anyways.
We don't talk about it.
Okay. Coach had a good question. No, I agree. I think just the environment's more hostile to him, and he doesn't have the same capabilities, so he just kind of like... He's cool. I love Archon. He's like one of the coolest dudes. Yep. He was, he's Mr. Loyalty. You gotta respect him. Cool character. He was always somebody I ran a ton of, for years and years. But nah, I think he's a pass. I agree. Coach has a good question.
Okay.
Coach's question, Brendan, where do you stand on Nagash outside of Petrifex Elite? Is Catacross our new superhero if we go down that road, or is there any reason to get Nagash into a list?
I don't think that outside of that Stalyarch list, because his mount is those flying ghosts.
Yes.
I don't think you take Nagash in Praetorians. I don't think you take him in Petrifex. I don't think you take him in Ivory Host, but I don't think you take anything in Ivory Host.
Sure.
I don't think you take him in No Myriad. I don't think you take him in the Crematorians, and I don't think you take him in just generic non-subfaction Bone Reapers.
Right.
I think if you're going to see him, you're going to see him back in Legions. And that's not exactly like a warm, fuzzy, happy feeling with all the things that live out there. But the game has shifted to a place where bringing 100 skeletons and Nagash is not a bad thing to do again. It's not as optimal as some of the other choices, but I don't think that that's a list that is as bad as it was for like a year cycle out.
Sure. When the dominant was overwhelming melee punch power that was just putting out like ungodly amounts of damage.
Rend and damage and number of attacks, and you're just like, cool.
Right, like yeah, because there was a certain amount that army could withstand, right? And then and if it went over the top of that, it would just crumble like the bones that they were. But as long as it held, right? It's very much the damn kind of play style. Now, to me, that answer honestly gets fixed when whatever Broken Realms things we get touches Legions, right? Because there's going to be a Broken Realms thing that touches Legions in some way, and whenever that happens, to me, like that's going to be the thing that brings Nagash back into the fold. He's too important of a character. He's too relevantly interesting, and he always ends up. You put the guy down, he just keeps coming back, right? So that's where it'll be.
Yep.
So, yeah, no, I agree. All right, cool. Anything else we want to talk about with our Ossiarch Bone Reapers? Let's. I have something I want to end on, but before I go to my last topic, I want to make sure Tom, Brendan, anything else that you feel is relevant to their current situation, the current sitch and status?
No, I think I covered.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I think we've covered a wide swath of the topic.
Okay.
I really do.
I like that the boogeyman nature of the list is gone. Not because all of these other horrible things have popped up, but I think removing the +1 save from Petrifex, while particularly harsh, remove the stigma around the army. Because it's one of those things that I hate to see, and it kind of lives as like this other half of the personality I put out on the internet, where I'm the bad guy and I want to kick your butt, and I'm going to be mean about it. But I'm also a tournament organizer. Like that's the other thing that I do.
Right.
And for those of you who don't know, my tournament that I run, Brew City Brawl, I really focus on the way that I feel most people play Warhammer. Most people are not like Tom. Want to kick you in the face and shake your hand and ask for a reasonable sportsmanship score. Now
that I have crushed your soul, could you please give me a 5 stars, please? Thank you.
I'll take a 4.
That's a pretty reasonable summary. Sure. I'm not gonna lie.
Like most people don't play Warhammer that way. That's the way that like when I go to a tournament, that's the way I want to play Warhammer. Right. But like when I'm hanging out with my buddies, unless we're practicing for a tournament, or I just happen to know that person also likes to bring the noise, that's not the way people play Warhammer. I think personally, as that tournament organizer, whose focus of that tournament is to let people play Warhammer in the way that they like to, and not have to feel like, oh, well, I'm not bringing the thing, and so I'm not going to win things. Like, if you want to do that, like, there's the trophy for you, you can do that. Most of the fun stuff is just like, hey, did you bring a list with a ton of monsters and you did super well? Here's a trophy. Right. Did you bring a list that's like 1,700 points of heroes and you finished ahead of the other 4 people that brought 1,700 points of heroes? Here's your trophy. I think removing that stigma that no matter what Bone Reapers are, punch you in the face, everyone who plays them is a bad person.
Right.
They've never paid their taxes. They push grandmas into traffic. Like, I think that was removed because you have like this weird kind of like internet realm space where you know, like you were saying, Vince, is, you know, 99.97% of all lists were Petrifex Elite, and then you have all these people who aren't as informed as someone like, you know, Tom or I, who go, yeah, you know, that's a thing. They go, well, this is a problem and it has to be changed. And so it did get changed. They're still good, but you don't have the average player who wants to leave a tournament at 3-2 and have a good time and drink some beers going like, oh, Bone Reapers in round 2, like, well, right. I guess I'm just going to take my loss and, like, whatever, man. Here you go. Like, have fun. And, like, that's a really shitty experience. Like, as me on the other side of it, like, yes, I want to play to win this game, but, like, come on.
Right.
We want it to be engaging and enjoyable.
Yeah. And I get, like, if your army had nothing that could be done against a 3-up save all around the table army, that probably wasn't very fun. But those are people who don't remember, like, the Staunch Drake Les Martin TM builds where,
yeah, sure.
You know, it was even worse.
Right. Right.
But, you know, the average person doesn't live in that, you know, that layer of the atmosphere as some of us who, you know, suck thin air and think think we're smarter than everybody. Like,
sure.
It's true.
All right.
Yeah.
So I got two final ways I want to round out. Okay. Which is one. Here's question one. How bad does the Magic have to get before Null Myriad becomes a choice?
Oof.
Because here's the thing, like, everything Null Myriad does is actually really good at stopping enemy magic, right? You're going to spend a lot of RDP to shut it down where you need to critically do it. But you can make your units 2-up ignore spells or endless spells.
Yeah.
Right? For an RDP. Like, that's potent.
It's pretty good.
Okay?
Yep.
But in non-magic games, right? Like, and there are still plenty of armies. One of my concerns is that in the current world, right, the way the world is shaken out with the spell doms is that it's kind of bifurcated people out into saying, like, well, if I can't play at the top of the magic pile, right, if I can't be the dominant force, then I'm just not going to use magic, right, or care. Like, it's not part of my game plan, right? That isn't to say there's not maybe some caster incidentally in there, okay?
Yeah.
But it's not part of my game plan to winning. And in those matchups, right, so when you face off against KO, or you face off against Big Wah, or something like that, right? Whatever. When you face off against New Giants, okay? Basically what Null Myriad is doing is a lot of nothing. I'm not saying absolutely nothing. The command trait could certainly still do a thing with your general. The weapon could still be relevant sometimes, I guess, to whoever you happen to swing with. But it's not that it's doing zero. It's just, it's clearly not the purpose, right? So because it's bifurcated the meta into magic and not magic, and there's still enough not magic that's very threatening and playing up in top tables, that's, I think, what keeps Null from being the auto choice. But I could see a world where if they add, like, maybe 2 more of those, and it just completely starts to dominate, you know what I mean? Like, 2 more spell doms come in the mix.
That was the exact number I had in my head. I was like, I think if it's like 2 armies, and the other flip side to it is if you're expecting to play 3 rounds against magic stuff, you know, the line is set at 2.5, and you're betting. Are you betting the over? Or are you betting the under?
Right.
Yep.
Because if you think you're going to play 3 spell doms, Null Myriad's a good choice.
Yeah, that's my point. I think that if there's like 2 more armies that enter the meta that really are spell doms in the way that we've seen, then what happens there is they might start pushing out the non-magic people more or less completely from the top, right? And then it becomes actually the concern. Right.
And then the corn meta starts as everybody starts taking skulls.
Yeah, the problem is too many of those spell doms are just like, nah, corn, I ain't about that life. It doesn't matter. Homie, I can't roll 8s. I pick my numbers. What are you doing? So, you know, good times. Okay, cool. No, that's what I thought. And then we already talked about how to, to get those more units in. But here's my question. We'll end on this. Somewhere in Broken Realms, if Broken Realms does turn out to be Psychic Awakening, as we all think it will be, okay? So let's just go with that assumption. OBR is going to show up, right? It's going to happen.
Yep.
Because every army eventually gets touched in Broken Realms. That's what it's. That's if it is to be Psychic Awakening, then every army gets a thing, in either a starting role or supporting role in every book. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do you want to see for OBR in their Broken Realms thing whenever that happens? What would you like to see added? I mean, by the way, you cannot use the answer of the hero that makes the nope, that makes the big boys battle line. We already did that. Can't do that again.
I have like 3 things that popped in my head like immediately.
All right.
So I'll steal it, and you can think about it, Tom.
Okay.
Archers. I would like bone archers, and they could throw javelins or something
like pylons, like super classic Roman type of situation.
Sure, they could just be Mortec guard that have slightly different shields.
Yeah.
And like an overhand spear, and I'd be like, different model, we're good. And like, I'm gonna paint 60 of them, and so that a foot liege cavalos to stand in there. Like disapproving samurai man from Catacross's base. Yeah. That would be something that was good.
He would be so sweet if he got his own like just walk around foot liege cavalos. Yes.
Yeah, just like that guy. Give him some little dynamism. Now we're gonna get something with an Underworld's warband, which the guy with like an axe or something.
Yeah.
Or like a big centerpiece model, like a Not like quite like a bone giant.
I mean, I knew that's where we were all going. As soon as you said that, everybody look. If you can assemble bones, you might as well just build a giant.
No, it shouldn't be a giant. It should be some sort of like other like creature from mythos.
Okay. Bone. What haven't we touched yet? What weird mythological creature haven't we touched yet in this game that we can build from bones?
What about taking like the Soul Stealer Carrion spell, but like making a bone bird flying monster vulture thing?
Yeah, giant bone vulture.
Yeah,
I like bone vultures. Bone vulture sounds cool. Plus, it would just further be, like riffing on the carrion of the Tomb Kings and just continuing to just be like.
Except it would be huge.
Dead. Yes.
Yeah, it'd be enormous.
Yeah. Big bone vulture, yes.
Yeah.
All right, I like it. Big bone bird. All right, cool. Tom, those are all solid ideas. I love all of them.
I'm gonna go a different direction.
Okay.
I'm gonna promote a casket style.
We just love Tomb Kings.
We're just gonna rip off everything they had.
I'd like a Tomb King army.
Sure, yeah. That's what I'm saying.
I'm gonna go with a casket style caster, which is the key here, because what they don't have is any good foot casters.
Okay.
And so I want a low mobility foot caster. We got to balance it. A low mobility foot caster that has access to all the lores like Arkan.
Okay.
Okay.
So, like, he draws... So, he's not literally in front of, like, we're not saying remake the casket, but he has some kind of little piece that he's dragging around with him, like, the Tomes of 1,000 Secrets or something, and it's just, like, a dude with 1,000 books strapped to him or something, and he can pull out all of them, and he has all this knowledge, right?
Yeah, like the keeper of the 1,000 Scrolls.
Yeah.
You make him a named character, and you give him one of Nagash's 9 books.
There you go. Yeah. There you go.
Yep. That would be interesting because that would be a piece that the army doesn't yet have.
Sure.
Because the problem is like if you go Catacross, you give up any real spellcasting.
Sure.
And this would let them like backdoor in and give them a tech piece that they have to make a decision on.
Okay. It'd be
Or
neat if, like, one of the things that was interesting about what the casket did is it had some kind of effect on the battlefield just by being there, right? It was a pseudo artillery piece. It would be interesting if this guy had a similar sort of function, right? Again, not the exact same thing, but where, and I'm not even saying like he makes a direct attack or anything like that. Could be a debuff he throws out, could be anything, but I'm saying like where he has a battlefield effect without casting a spell, sort of simply for existing by making a roll by being there, right?
Like a passive aura or debuff aura or whatever.
Sure.
What if you, like what you saw with the Loon Shrine rules being modified with like the Trog Boss herd subfaction, this character changes the way that you use the Bone Tithe Nexus, where instead of setting it up ahead of time, it is set up with your army, and he has to remain in range of the Nexus to use these abilities, but it basically becomes like a super Nexus.
I like that ability. That's really interesting. Yeah, that could be cool. That could be real cool.
Send my resume to Games Workshop. I got ideas. I'm an ideas man.
There we go. I love it. And also, I do want to shout out Horrible in the chat who said, "So what Volk Morton should be." And I mean, yeah, we're all kind of saying that. Yes, you're not wrong. But yes, the Nexus Lord, as Meph said. And yes, the Nexus Lord, it should be whatever cool person's name, the Nexus Lord. Special character, changes the way the Nexus deploys and oversees the actual Bone Tithe Nexuses. Perfect. Love it. Well, we've solved it.
Bone Nexi.
Bone Nexi, yes.
Yeah, wave 2 Ossiarch Bone Reapers 2022.
Actually, Tom, it's little known fact. The Nexus is like Attorney General. So when it becomes multiples, it's actually the Bones Tithe Nexus. That's the multiple of it. Just like Attorneys General.
Sure.
Yeah. So
I was wondering where that was headed.
He's the overseer of the Bones Tithe.
Go on.
Okay. All right. Well, Brendan, thank you very much, buddy. It was great to have you back on the show. This was so much fun. Or on the show, not back on. But you're going to be back in the future. We're not doing this again. You will come back.
Good.
As I command. Catacrow style.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's really nice.
It's been an absolute pleasure. For all of you out there who are watching, thank you so much. OBR has been a rocky subject to talk about in the show. Every time we talk about him, there's always some people who are just like, ah! So I think that speaks to your point you made earlier, Brendan. But this has been much more positive this time around. So I think you're just watching the chat. I feel that what you said about the change of perception of them is very much true. Last time we did the show, people were not thrilled about OBR. This time, people seem pretty happy. Yeah, so that's good. So, hey...
They've forgotten who the real enemy is, and much like in the lore of the Bone Reapers, they will come back and they will collect their tithe.
That's right. They come and they go, but they always return. So yes, please do hit that like button. It's very much appreciated. It helps other people find the show. But as always, I thank you all very much for watching. And next week, it'll be Giant Talk. We'll see you then. Have a good one. See you next Wednesday.